A lot of us put our health on the back burner, and during the if it doesn't hurt mentality, then nothing's wrong. We have a local health and nutrition expert doing all the work, telling us how to alleviate the chemicals from inhabiting our bodies. Joining me is Cindy Clement, author of Your Body's Environmental Chemical Burden. Welcome to the show, Cindy.
Thank you, Dana. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, you actually contacted me. You brought this all to my attention because I didn't know any of this stuff really. I mean, and now like hearing about it, I'm like, it makes complete sense. But why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to the body chemical burden?
Absolutely. It's an interesting story. I had attended a lecture in the fall of 2013, and in passing, the presenter mentioned the two words body burden. And initially, I thought it must be the emotional burden that everybody carries, or perhaps it's the excess weight that people carry. Never dawned on me that it would be an environmental burden. But I'm telling you that as the weeks went on after that lecture, I kept hearing in my head, body burden, as if I was supposed to look into this.
It was like your mission.
It was, I just couldn't get finally I thought I've got to try it. So I went to the online library, typed in body burden. Over 400,000 research papers came up. Narrowed it down to the previous 3 years, still 120,000 research papers came up. So I started opening them up and reading them, and the more I read, the more curious I became. So I asked my friend, my mentor, my personal physician, Dr. Lev Linkner, can I get my body burden tested? He said, if you can find a test, I'd be glad to order it if you need it. And so I searched and searched, and I know that assessing one's body fat, their actual body fat, is the most reliable approach to assessing a body burden. But you can only have that done in a clinical study, in a research project, because many of these chemicals are not in our blood, aren't in our urine. But that's all I could find. So we ordered a test from Genova Diagnostics down in the Carolinas, and they tested me for about 45 different chemicals through blood and through urine. And when the test results came back, the results to me were absolutely startling. I'm 66 years old. For over 4 decades, I have been eating organically, using the safest personal care products that I could possibly find, mostly because I'm very sensitive to chemicals, but also using the safest cleaning products I could find, which oftentimes did not work, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I would use them and I'd think, okay, well that did nothing. Hey. But I went on to really try and look at why I would be in the 95th percentile on certain chemicals, why I would be in the 80th percentile. And what that means is that out of 100 people at the 95th percentile, that means that only 5 other people had levels in their body that exceeded mine. Now again, this is coming from a person who is extremely careful about...
Yeah, you were well aware of what you were putting into your body for a very long time.
For 4 decades. So it was at that point I thought, I've got to look at this, and started more research and trying to find research papers pertaining to the chemicals that this laboratory tested for, as well as what were in my body. And I came to understand what the chemical is used for in manufacturing. Made perfect sense. Also, the potential health effects that can occur in the body, as well as how I would reduce my toxic load in the future. So I really put a lot of time, 5 years of my life, into this book. But again, not even realizing at that point I was writing a book. It was really more for my personal self and just this mission I felt I was on to learn about that body burden.
So why don't you tell me about the book and how it actually finally came to fruition and what we can see and like how the book helps us, because it's really sort of a guide for us.
It is. It's a resource guide, Dana. And as I did all of this research, the story goes on that each night at dinner, my husband would say to me, what did you learn today? Because he knew I was obsessed with this project. And our conversations became more and more sobering over time, because what I was learning was not painting a pretty picture for the millennial generation, their children, and their grandchildren, and the potential hardships that they will face because of this environmental contamination. So much so, it bothered me that much that I had to take a break from this project because I didn't have any answers at this point. What I did find out is that the average infant coming into this world in 2010, mind you, came in with an average of 287 environmental chemicals in their umbilical cord blood.
Wow.
Now, when I was born 66 years ago, those chemicals were not in existence. So I didn't come into this world with a burden already.
And this is all coming from the mother.
Oh my goodness, yes. So this mother is passing on these chemical contaminants, and then the body burden is added to with the personal care products that we're rubbing on that baby, especially in the diaper area. You know, mouthing plastic toys and sucking on pacifiers that have antibacterials on them. And it really went on, and I became so disturbed at what I had read that I just put it away for a while and thought, I just don't know what to do with this. Thought about it, and I thought someone had to someone would have had to address this topic. How can I find the answers to this? That's when I picked up the research in a different way. Now I wanted to know how to avoid it, and what other options are there for pacifiers? What other options
because
are there?
Because you still need these things. You still
Exactly.
need diaper rash medication.
That's exactly right. So I found the resources and tools available. So the way the book is set up is I have it, the first chapter is all on the air that we breathe and what's in the air and how to avoid what's in our air, when to open the windows in your car, when to open the windows in your home, and when to keep them closed. And all of the resources I mentioned in this book are free and available to everyone, whether it's an app on your smartphone or if it's something that you bookmark on your computer. Everyone has access to these tools. So now, on a daily basis, not so much in the winter. We don't have so many problems with the air in the winter. But once the heat comes around and the particulate matter starts to rise and the ozone is rising, now we know, do I open the windows or not? And that's a simple tool. Next, what I've done is talked about what we put on our skin, the chemicals that we put on our skin, and the potential health effects that can occur. So now I've provided resources. So when you run out of your face cream or your diaper rash cream, here's where you go to find one that's safe. And maybe the one you've been using has been safe. So
but you just don't know if you're not looking.
That's exactly right, unless you're checking. So a number of resources. And finally, I talk about the foods that we're eating. So which canned goods aren't lined with a toxic chemical? There are a list of companies that don't do that. Or how should I store my leftovers? What about getting coffee outside the home? You know, do I drink out of the plastic cup or the styrofoam cup with the plastic lid? No. Take your own stainless steel mug, and so simple, practical advice on how to avoid these contaminants as best as you can.
So if you do have a lot of these chemicals, what could potentially happen to you? Cancer or?
Oh my goodness. Well, take for instance the PFAS and the dioxins that are talked about quite a bit in Ann Arbor today. Both of those chemicals are carcinogenic, meaning that it could possibly cause cancer in people. But here's where it gets a little bit complicated in that why one person would get cancer and another wouldn't from a chemical, there are a number of different factors involved. One of them can be, what is the health of that individual's detoxification organs? Do they function very well, or are they impaired? Another one would be, what's their nutritional status? What do they eat? How healthy are they? Do they exercise? Do they drink enough water? Do they get enough sleep? What was in their DNA? Was their DNA already damaged and shown cancer in the gene lines? Most importantly is the level of exposure, the frequency, the duration, and the timing. So were they exposed at age 70 or were they exposed in the womb? So there are a number of factors involved in determining who will suffer the consequences of that chemical in the body and who won't.
And we don't really know what's going to happen to the next generation because they're so young and they have so many chemicals in their body from the start.
That's right. So it's really important. And the mission of my work, truly, is to educate millennials. That's the generation I want to make an impact with. When my publicist recommended that I do a national survey on millennials, we did that. We worked with a third-party research firm called Engageus. They're a research and marketing firm, and they did a national survey with these millennials. And what we found are 88% of this group are either somewhat concerned or extremely concerned about the environmental chemicals, and that a gap, in their own words, a gap exists for them as to what can they do to avoid these chemicals. They have no idea. They don't know about the tools and resources. So my mission really is to educate that generation, because that's how the madness is going to stop. If we can get these young females of childbearing age, if we can detoxify their bodies for a year, now all of a sudden they're not passing these chemicals on. And in that year, educating them on where to get a safer cleaning product, a safer pesticide, a safer personal care product. This is the way we stop the madness. We can't avoid the chemicals. Without the chemicals, we wouldn't have this chair, we wouldn't have cameras, we wouldn't have carpeting.
And we can't fear everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
That the point is that we can't avoid 85,000 synthetic chemicals. But the ones that do affect us mostly are what we rub on our skin, that we breathe, and that we get into our mouth. And so those are the ones that we really want to focus on.
Okay. Well, so where can people get the book? Because it's a great guide for people to get started on this.
That's exactly right. So it's available on Amazon online, it's available at Barnes & Noble online, and it's also available at Books A Million online, BAM, online. So any of those three outlets carry this book.
So you can pretty much get it wherever online.
It's $19.99, and
worth every penny.
A lot of times a lot of people have commented on how useful it's been. One of the things that really surprised me is that people that have an unresolved medical condition, I thought this was interesting, that what they find when they read this book is, oh my goodness, maybe this isn't a medical condition. Maybe this is a reaction to, the skin reaction is from the soap I'm using. And so they stop using this soap and they find a better soap and their skin clears up. Or someone with respiratory disorders, they find out that burning the candle in their home was putting different toxins into the air. And so it's been useful for people with these unresolved medical issues.
Well, that's an amazing tool too, because I can just imagine those people going to multiple doctor's appointments trying to figure out what's wrong, and no doctor can figure it out. So
isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any word of advice before we go that you'd give people why they should check it out?
Well, I'll tell you, there is a community lecture here in Ann Arbor. It's Monday evening, January 28th. It's free. It's at 7:00 p.m. in the Morris Lawrence building on the campus of Washtenaw Community College. Plenty of free parking, you don't need to register, and I'm really going to put this book in a nutshell and provide the tools, have them take out their cell phones, take a picture of the slides so they have the resources, and get to work on it.
All right, well, thank you so much, Cindy, for filling me in on this.
Thank you for having me, Dana.
For more on this and other programs, visit a2gov.org/watchctn. Visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to see all this and other things that CTN has to offer. Remember to like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time to FYI.